You could suffocate in your sleep on the International Space Station. Not from a hull breach, not from a fire, from your own breathing. In microgravity, the carbon dioxide you exhale doesn't drift away like it does on Earth. It just sits there, forms a bubble right around your face. And if you're not sleeping next to a ventilation fan, that bubble slowly starves your brain of oxygen while you dream about floating. That's the kind of thing nobody warns you about before you move into a metal tube 250 miles above the planet. But it's one of dozens of unwritten rules that every astronaut learns to live by, sometimes the hard way. To understand how strange daily life really gets up there, start with something simple. Breakfast. On Earth, you'd grab some toast, maybe a sandwich. On the ISS, bread is essentially banned, and that rule exists because of a corned beef sandwich that nearly caused a disaster in 1965. Astronaut John Young smuggled one aboard Gemini 3, tucked into his spacesuit pocket. He pulled it out mid-flight, offered his commander a bite, and within seconds, rye breadcrumbs were floating everywhere, drifting toward instrument panels, heading for air vents, getting dangerously close to the astronaut's eyes. The whole thing lasted less than a minute before they shoved the sandwich away, but NASA took it seriously. Crumbs in microgravity become what engineers call foreign object debris. They can clog equipment, get inhaled, or float into somebody's lungs. After that, bread was out. But astronauts still wanted sandwiches. The fix came 20 years later when a Mexican payload specialist named Rodolfo Nerivella requested tortillas for his mission aboard Atlantis in 1985. The crew noticed something immediately. Tortillas don't crumble, they store well. You can wrap practically anything in them. They became the go-to bread substitute, and they still are today. Crew members use them for breakfast burritos, PB and J wraps, even space cheeseburgers. In 2024 alone, astronauts reportedly went through over 3,000 of them. And tortillas aren't the only creative workaround. You can't shake salt and pepper up there either. Think about it. Tiny grains floating into air vents, into your eyes, into electronics. So NASA dissolves salt in water and suspends pepper in oil. Astronauts squeeze seasoning onto their food from little dropper bottles, like hot sauce packets, but way less satisfying. It works though. And when your taste buds are dulled by microgravity, which actually happens because fluids shift toward your head and give you permanent congestion, you'll take any flavour you can get. That's why hot sauce and spicy food are some of the most requested items on the station. Now back to the sleeping thing. Every astronaut on the ISS sleeps inside a crew quarter, roughly the size of a phone booth. They strap into a sleeping bag attached to the wall, because without it you'd slowly drift into a ventilation grate or bump into equipment all night. There's no up or down, so some people sleep standing, some sleep upside down. Doesn't matter. Gravity isn't making that call anymore. But the real rule, the one that actually keeps people alive, is always sleep near moving air. Those ventilation fans aren't just for comfort, they're breaking up the CO2 that pools around your face. Some astronauts have actually woken up with splitting headaches and trouble breathing because the airflow in their sleeping area was too weak. Studies have confirmed that CO2 accumulates in the crew quarters faster than the scrubbing system can handle it, especially when the air ducts get clogged with dust over time. So picking your sleep spot carefully isn't just a preference, it's a survival habit. And then there's the 2-hour rule. Every astronaut must exercise for about 2 hours every single day. Not suggested, required. Without gravity constantly pulling on your muscles and bones, your body starts breaking down. Muscle tissue wastes away. Bone density drops. After 6 months in space, an astronaut who skipped workouts would come home barely able to stand. The ISS has a treadmill with a harness system that pulls you down onto the belt, a stationary bike, and a resistance machine that uses vacuum cylinders to simulate weight. 2 hours, every day, no exceptions. The social rules are just as strict, even if nobody writes them down. You're living in a space roughly the size of a 6-bedroom house, but you're sharing it with 5 or 6 other people for months. There's nowhere to go for a walk, no door you can slam. Psychologists who study long-duration spaceflight have found that crew members tend to develop specific coping strategies. Some withdraw and work more independently when tension builds. Others, interestingly, redirect their frustration toward mission control instead of their crewmates, which researchers say actually helps preserve relationships on board. It's not healthy in the long run, but when you're stuck in a tin can at 17,500 miles per hour, you work with what you've got. Privacy matters more than you'd think. Each crew member personalizes their tiny sleeping pod with photos of family, personal items, anything to make it feel like their space. Meal times are treated as social events. Crews from different countries share food. American astronauts and Russian cosmonauts regularly trade meals. Japanese astronauts have held sushi parties. A French astronaut once had macarons delivered to the station for his birthday. These small rituals aren't trivial. When you're isolated in an extreme environment for half a year, a shared meal is one of the few things that still feels normal. There's another rule that most people never consider. Every astronaut must have a working knowledge of Russian. The ISS was built and operated as a partnership between the United States, Russia, Japan, Europe, and Canada. Russian is one of the primary operational languages. Astronauts go through intensive language training before they ever leave the ground, and some even live with Russian host families to practice. When a system alarm goes off and the instructions are in Russian, you need to understand them immediately, and communication on board follows its own protocol. Flight controllers and crew use the phonetic alphabet, say 50 instead of 50 to avoid confusion, and use affirmative and negative instead of yes and no. These habits come from decades of lessons learned, including a catastrophic aviation disaster at Tenerife in 1977, where miscommunication between a pilot and air traffic control killed 583 people. In space, where help is hours away at best, getting a word wrong can cost everything. So when you picture life on the ISS, don't picture a luxury hotel with a view. Picture a cramped, noisy laboratory where the fans never stop humming. The food comes in pouches, your muscles are dissolving, and one wrong sleeping position could literally knock you unconscious. Every routine, from how you eat to where you sleep to how you talk, exists because somebody learned the hard way that space doesn't forgive small mistakes. And somehow, people volunteer for this. They train for years, learn a second language, give up fresh air and real showers and bread, just for the chance to look out the cupola window and see 16 sunrises in a single day. If you want to see what happens when those rules get broken, and trust me they have, that video is on screen now.